Hello all and welcome to this webinar presentation for Mallow GAA Club. This event will be hosted by myself, Barry John Ryan of Barry John Ryan Financial Planning, and we're delighted to be joined today as our guest by former juvenile and senior club player Des Golden. Des, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Barry John. Great to be here, and thanks to yourself and Bartley for organising this. I think it's a great initiative, and I'm only delighted to present here for 20 minutes on this topic. So thanks again.
Excellent. As I said, Des, welcome back to Mallow from his home in Majorca. So a virtual link up this morning. Des, you've traveled a lot of the world since we've seen you last. Can you tell us about what you've been up to? I suppose very interesting, particularly in two things. Number one, your work with the Rafa Nadal Tennis Academy in Spain, and more recently, the launch of your new consultancy business, Des Golden Coaching. So you might just fill us in on what you've been up to.
Sure. So my background is physical education. I was teaching in Dublin and Cork, and then I did a bit of lecturing in UCC as well before moving out to Colombia, and where I met my wife. And from there, after spending a year in Colombia, learning Spanish and so on, I moved to Mallorca to work in the Rafa Nadal Academy. So it was a great experience. I spent 3 years there, teaching there, coordinating the sports science, and also doing a bit of coaching one-on-one with the young people in the academy, the young athletes who are, under severe pressure. Trying to kind of make a career out of tennis, and competing with each other, very pressurized environment, and maybe trying to kind of fulfill the expectations of the tennis federation that is kind of paying for their fees possibly. So it was a real eye-opener, and I got to spend time around Rafa Nadal too, which was a privilege to kind of see him up close and personal. From there, I launched my own business, which I do two things: I coach entrepreneurs and executives one-on-one, and I also work with companies who want to kind of improve the performance of their team, the various teams within their companies. So leveraging my experience and my background in education and sport, and bringing it to the world of business. So that's where I'm at now. And while I'm kind of in Mallorca, I'm between Mallorca and Ireland, and I split my time between both countries. And obviously with Zoom and virtual platforms, it's I can reach clients around the world, which is fantastic.
Excellent, very good. Definitely exciting times for you, Des, and we wish you all the best with that. I imagine that the work you've done with these young athletes should be hugely transferable to our own juvenile players here in the club, and perhaps you might highlight that in your presentation.
Sure. Okay. So we'll just get into it there. You can see my screen, okay? So the approach I decided to take to resilience is I'm going to share 4 stories, 3 ideas, 2 quotes, and 1 question for the young people of Mallow Juvenile GAA. I'm not I'm not a role model for resilience, but I'm trying to be resilient every day, a bit more resilient than yesterday, and I think that's the key about resilience. So what I've done is I've researched this topic, and I've been inspired by people who I've managed to kind of spend time close to, certain people who've inspired me, and I've kind of learned lessons from them about resilience. So just to define it, the simple definition, it's about recovering from difficulties, really. That's what resilience is. And life is, is tough, and, it presents difficulties, and they never go away. We know that resilient people are good at withstanding stress. They're good at focusing. They're generally positive, and very good at, getting support from their friends and family, and reaching out and talking to their friends and family when challenges present. And, crucially, they've come through or lived in an environment which has forced them to be resilient. It's very hard to expect people to be resilient if they've lived a life of comfort and they haven't experienced failure or challenge. I think that's the key. So maybe we need to think about how we are confronting our, what our environment is like, how are we presenting challenges and opportunities for growth for our children and our players. So maybe for coaches and parents, maybe need to think about that, but also for the young people in Mallow Juvenile GA, are you seeking out challenge? Because if you are, then, that's your first step then to becoming more resilient. Greg LeMond is a famous cyclist, and I just alluded to it there earlier. He was asked about climbing the mountains in the Tour de France, and he said, look, it doesn't get easier, you just get a bit faster. And I think that's resilience in life. Life doesn't get easier. The worries never stop. The challenges never stop, but you just get a bit better at dealing with it. You get a bit better recovering from when things don't go well. You become a bit more resilient. So four stories or lessons from people who've inspired me in this topic. Viktor Frankl, I'm not sure if people have heard of him. When I was researching this topic a number of years back, I heard that, I read somewhere that people have been known to be happy even in the oppressive environment of concentration camp. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to find out about this. How could that possibly be? And that's when I came across Viktor Frankl. He was a Jewish man who lived in Austria, in Vienna. And, at the age of 15, he gave his first public lecture on the meaning of life. So to tell you what kind of character he was, he corresponded with Freud, this kind of stuff. He was a psychiatrist, and obviously the Nazis took Austria, and he had actually an immigration visa to go to America and decided to stay back to help his parents in Austria, despite, the imminent threat of Nazi takeover. He suffered a lot. His wife was forced to have an abortion because Jewish people couldn't have children. And soon after that, he was landed into a concentration camp. And, he experienced happiness in a concentration camp. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which I'd recommend people to get a hold of and read. And, so how can he experience happiness and a kind of a positive mindset when he's surrounded by so much kind of death and suffering? I visited Auschwitz, actually, and I don't know, have you been there, Barry John or Bartley? But the one thing that struck me when I went into Auschwitz is the photos of the Jewish people on the walls when they were, transported there. They were photographed and various kind of measurements taken. The tears running down their faces, the elderly and the young people. And just fear. It was so impactful. So, a really, really horrific environment. So how did he manage to kind of deal with this? Two things, really. Ultimately, he said it's a decision in your mind. Your attitude and your resilience is a decision, and you have the ultimate control over that. It exists between your ears. So you can control your decision to be resilient or positive despite the circumstances. And he found a lot of the people in the concentration camp, when they died, they made a decision that they didn't want to live anymore. And soon after they died. Now this is the ultimate mindset and something to aspire to. It's not something you can kind of click your fingers and have overnight, but what it does, it opens up the possibility of this is what the human mind is capable of. Viktor Frankl found meaning in what he was doing. He was counseling a lot of the people in the concentration camps. So he had a reason to get up every morning and to kind of, shoulder the burden of living in these horrible circumstances. Struggle is good when there's meaning involved. Nietzsche, the famous philosopher, said, "He with a why can bear almost any how." And I think Viktor Frankl really kind of typifies that. He was liberated by the Allies, and he launched a successful practice. He traveled the world, obviously, and wrote a book, and became a speaker on this topic. So the first lesson from Viktor Frankl is that resilience is a choice. And if you find meaning in what you're doing, you're probably going to be much more resilient. The second person who I've had the pleasure of knowing and spending time with, I got to know when I was teaching in Dublin, is Mark Pollock. Mark was born in Hollywood in County Down. At the age of 5, his right eye the retina detached and he lost the sight in his right eye. Now, he had a pretty straightforward upbringing. Obviously, he avoided contact sports. And, you know, at 22, at age 18, he went to Trinity College in Dublin, became an international rower, graduated, and had his life in front of him, ready to take up a position in London as a lawyer, and the retina detached in his left eye. Now he's blind. So he had his sight and he's lost it. It's a really, really tough thing to deal with. Mark went on and became an adventure athlete. He ran marathons in the deserts, in the Gobi Desert. And in 2009, he was the first blind man to reach the South Pole, became an international speaker on motivation and so on. Now, Mark's story doesn't stop there. You know, having shown that resilience to bounce back from his loss of vision, his story kind of takes another turn. 2010, he fell off a balcony when he was in a regatta in Henley and he became paralyzed. So, you know, talk about challenge. I don't know, could it be possibly worse? I invited him down to our school in Cork a number of years ago, and a student asked him the question, how do you keep going in life and, you know, wake up every morning despite having so much kind of challenge in your life? What's your advice? What do you do? And Mark's response was, do something. Just do something. So it's really simple, but so powerful. So this idea that action is vital, you know, being in motion is when we're kind of talking about something, planning, but there's nothing happening. Action is when we're kind of moving forward and we're trying things, okay? We're stretching ourselves, we're taking risks, we're kind of acknowledging that we're willing to fail. I love the saying that mood follows action. The runner's high comes after the run, not before. So you need to take the action and the mood will follow afterwards. I think that's a kind of a great kind of little rule that you could live by for your life. So not to be sitting at home and licking your wounds and feeling sorry for yourself. So we have to kind of confront the challenge rather than wish it was not before us. I think really that's the key thing here. Mark, like Viktor Frankl, went on to find more meaning in his life. He launched the Run in the Dark, which is an event where people come together and run at night time to raise money for a cure for paralysis. He's searching for a cure for paralysis. So that's his kind of reason to get up every morning. So the lesson from Mark Pollock is, I suppose, when you're faced with adversity, do something. Develop a bias for action rather than, you know, giving into the temptation of seeking comfort and kind of doing nothing. The third person is Rafa Nadal, and as we spoke in introduction there, I've had the pleasure of working up close to him for 3 years. His achievements obviously are incredible. Statistically, he's the best tennis player of all time now. And of the kind of the big three, he's most renowned for himself, Djokovic and Federer. He's most renowned for his mental strength, his resilience. Now, technically, he's amazing, but maybe doesn't get the acknowledgement for his technical ability because the mental part is so strong, and I would say stronger than anybody else, any of his rivals. His favorite preference is clay, which is a kind of a court which lends itself to slower tennis. The ball doesn't bounce as fast. You know, longer games is more of a slog. Jimmy Connors, the famous ex-tennis player, said that Rafa plays like he's someone who's financially broke. You know, and that was a great line. So I was in the gym one day with Rafa, and I asked him, I was lucky enough to share the gym with him for a couple of years. And I asked him, how can you play with such ferocity and determination? And it's almost like, you know, your life depends on the next ball. How can you play with that intensity? But yet when you lose, you seem to kind of recover pretty quickly. And Rafa's response was, his goal was to empty the tank. His primary reason is his main aim is to empty the tank and overcome obstacles. So he values resilience, and that's what he is hunting, and that's what he's pursuing. The success and the trophies, they ensue, they come as a kind of a secondary thing. What he's most preoccupied with is developing his mind as a person and becoming, you know, mentally stronger every day and being resilient. So I suppose the lesson from Rafa Nadal really is maybe, as these young people in Mallow, as you're kind of getting older, maybe your parents might have instilled certain values in you: respect older people, be honest, whatever it is. But I would say have a look at resilience. If you want to become more resilient and mentally tougher, you probably first need to value it. And I think that's the big lesson from Rafa Nadal, because if you value something, you're probably going to behave in line with that value then. The next person I'm going to embarrass, the host of this webinar, is Barry John Ryan. And I remember, I know Barry John for years. Obviously, our families are kind of really well connected in Mallow. And we all know Barry John. He's Mr. Mallow, and he's all that's good about Mallow. I think Barry John sums it up really. And I remember he made his debut for the Mallow senior footballers at the age of 27. And I remember Ronan Sheehan commenting it in a meeting before the game, playing Clyde Rovers, local rivals, lots of pressure, small village versus the big town. We've everything to lose. And I remember Barry John made his debut at wing back, and we were delighted for him because, his application and, really good sportsman. And he was taken off quite early in the game. I think he was out in Killavon maybe. And I remember thinking, oof, this is tough. It's kind of embarrassing. That's a big knock to take to ship. That's probably the end of BJ now for the year. But I think we had a training session subsequently. And I remember talking to Barry John, and he said, I didn't agree with the decision for them to take me off, but I'm going to put my head down now and focus on training and getting prepared for the next session, or for the next game, the replay. So it was a drawn game, the first game. So he saw it as an opportunity rather than a kind of an opportunity and a challenge rather than a kind of a failure. And that was the first time I came across this idea of growth mindset, which is so popular now. There's been books written about it. The first time I saw it up and close. So this saying I would associate with Barry John, and put the head down now. So growth mindset people, they believe that skills can be developed through practice and perseverance. And the fixed mindset would believe that maybe intellect and talent and skills are set. You're kind of born with them. You can't really change them. So growth mindset people, they like to seek out challenges because it's an opportunity for them to improve. They like feedback, and they like new experiences. And the fixed mindset people then would be more concerned with maybe getting a pat on the back, creating situations where they don't fail, so not maybe bringing on or inviting a challenge into their life. So Barry John played the replay against Clyde and played very well, and went on to be one of our most consistent performers that year. We got the semi-final of the county senior football. We were a really good team with a fantastic season. And I think, it was a big lesson for me personally about, there is another way. When we fail, there's another way. And that's the kind of growth mindset way. And no surprises, Barry John is kind of, he's launched his own business now. He's left the comfort of working for an employer. And, he's growing into making his business work in Mallow now. So that's the kind of professional challenge. So he embodies this idea of the growth mindset for me. And so the lesson from Barry John is adopt a growth mindset. You can improve every day, small but better every day. So there are the four lessons. Resilience is a choice, and find meaning in what you're doing and you'll be more resilient. That's from Viktor Frankl. The second one is developing an action for bias, from Mark Pollock. So mood follows action. The third one then is from Rafa Nadal: prioritize resilience as a value and you will be more resilient. And the fourth one then from Barry John Ryan is to adopt a growth mindset. Super. Okay, so we'll just look at 3 ideas now around this topic of resilience. And I think the placebo effect is a very interesting one. And the placebo effect, and I know Barclay know about this, and I don't know, have Mallow more pharmaceutical reps than any other club in Cork? I'm not so sure. So they know all about the placebo effect. So the placebo effect is when a person's physical or mental state appears to improve after taking a kind of a placebo or dummy treatment. So they use it to compete against other drugs that are trying to come onto the market. So if the new potential drug has a greater impact than the placebo, which is nothing, then that's a kind of a positive indication that this drug might have an impact. Ali Crum is an interesting person in America. She's a neuroscientist, and she says there's more research on the placebo than any other drug in the world. And to highlight this, they did a study recently in nutrition, and they gave two groups a milkshake. And group A was told that it had extra nutrients in it, and group B was told that here's just a milkshake. And they took it for a period of time daily. And then when they tested the two groups after 6 weeks or whatever it was, group A, the people who were told this is actually really nutritious and it'll be good for health, they showed improvements in physiological markers of health and hormonal markers as well. So just by believing that this thing was better for them, they actually showed a physiological improvement in their health. So this connection between the mind and body, it's established now. What you think affects your body and how it responds. So the right dose of expectations can be as powerful as one of the most strongest painkillers. Even morphine, the placebo drug, has kind of rivaled morphine in some trials. It's from Professor Robert Coghill. So I think don't underestimate the power of positive thinking. And the brain, I suppose, is like a muscle. And we can train it to kind of get a bit more resilient, and positive thinking is a big part in that. So that's the placebo effect. The second one is this idea of our inner voice. It's just this inner dialogue we have in our heads that no one else hears it. We just hear it. And we all talk to ourselves. And resilient people tend to talk to themselves, and they tend to be quite positive when they do so. Jim Lair is a famous performance psychologist in America. And he says, it's the power broker in your life. How well you revisit the tone and content of your voice determines the quality of your life. It's the master storyteller. And what we tell ourselves really becomes our reality. So, once you get this voice right, you have a fantastic coach in your head from when things go wrong, and you have it until you die. So we probably need to kind of maybe practice what we want to say to ourselves. Resilient people tend to talk to themselves and they're positive. Luckily, some people have the kind of good fortune of being, they're resilient, they're positive, and that's the way it is. But many others, we can arrive at that point as well through practice. We know our thoughts affect our emotions. If we don't know where thoughts come from, it's very hard to affect where the thought comes from. But when it arrives, through self-talk, we can influence it, how we interpret the thought. And then that'll affect our emotions and our actions. So I would say that, first of all, what's the inner dialogue in your head? Are you aware of how you speak to yourself? Number one. And then when you got that awareness, start to script it out to be more positive, and so that you have this inner coach that is with you, so that you can be more resilient. The third idea is I like to share is this idea of learning to enjoy the process orientation. So sometimes we can get fixated on the goal, the outcome, the winning, and these generally tend to be kind of short-lived, fleeting moments. We spend much more time in the process. So learning to enjoy the grind of the daily stuff is really, really vital. Consider, the mountaineer, how much time they need to get up the mountain. And then they're on the top, yeah, it's enjoyable, but they spend much more time going up the mountain. It would stand to reason then that they learn to enjoy every step. They're living in the present. They're not focusing on when they get there. You'll probably make a mistake if you're focusing on the top of the mountain when you're going up the mountain. So enjoying that process. The process takes longer than the outcome. The marathon runner will train for like 20 weeks, all for something that happens in 5 hours, if they're kind of an average runner. So if you have a positive mindset and a growth mindset, using the placebo, then you can tell yourself that you love the process, you love the daily grind. So you can trick your mind into that. So there's no problem in trying to kind of set goals and achieve goals, but we need to enjoy the kind of the process along the way. The problem that arises when we're really fixated on the outcome. So enjoying the process and loving the day-to-day stuff. That's a kind of third idea. So just two quotes then on resilience. Marcus Aurelius is the famous Roman emperor. He's a great book called Meditations, actually. So the Stoic philosophy. He says, accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what more could aptly fit your needs. So really that's about accepting, what's happened in the past now is gone, it's done. You can't change that, even though you want to go back and reflect and kind of maybe beat yourself up for it, that you failed in the past. What we need to be doing is looking forward now. What happened in the past it's a part of our story. Let's start writing the next chapters. We can influence the future and we can't influence the past. And the second one I'd like to share is this fantastic man. He's actually dead now. He's a Hungarian academic who moved to America, and he's written extensively on the topic of flow and happiness. If you are pained by external things, it is not that they disturb you, but it's your judgment of them. And it's in your power to wipe out that judgment now. So the most of what we think or feel, we conjure up for ourselves in our heads. Events can be very traumatic for one person and absolutely brilliant for the next person. So it's how we interpret what happens to us, which is the Viktor Frankl thing as well. Trauma isn't experienced unless, we think of it as trauma. So this is, again, it's a mindset to aspire to. It's not to kind of be disrespectful for people who have suffered really, really greatly in their lives, but it's a possibility. It's something maybe to work towards. And finally, I'll just leave the people of Mallow GAA with one question. In the situations that give you the most amount of trouble, how do you want to speak to yourself? So I would say you script it out, you write it, and you have it somewhere, and you go to it again and again and again. Great. So that's my piece on resilience, Barry John, and thanks very much for listening and giving me the opportunity to speak.
Excellent, Des. That was really, really good. The content was excellent and very much of great interest to us, and definitely of huge benefit to the juvenile members of the club, and I imagine even to their parents as well, in terms of people's everyday life and sporting life. Obviously, desgolan.com is your website. So this is obviously very reflective of the type of work you do and the content in terms of working with both executives and entrepreneurs.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if you're interested more, you can have a look there and reach out to me as well.
Perfect. Okay, Des, on behalf of myself, Barry John Ryan of Barry John Ryan Financial Planning, Bartley Galvin, Chairman of Mallow Juvenile GAA, I'd really like to thank you for your time, Des, the quality of the presentation. I think resilience is an essential requirement for everyday life, be it sport, be it people in school, be it in terms of their careers. And hopefully for season 2022, Mallow Juvenile GAA will be able to harness some of what you've highlighted here today and put this resilience into play. So thanks again, Des. Really appreciate your time, and the very best of luck to you with your business. Again, on another positive note, before I sign off, I'd like to congratulate Des and Ana Lucia on the recent arrival of baby Sam. Great news, and it's great to hear that both Ana Lucia and Sam are doing well. So congratulations on behalf of Mallow Juvenile GAA on your good news, Des.
Great, thanks very much, Barry John. Mom and baby doing well, so we're delighted. There was no babies crying that came through that feed there, I hope. So
yeah, no, all very clear, So thanks again, Des, and for those people watching in, thanks very much for your interest. If you enjoyed the presentation, leave a comment or leave your thumbs up, give us the thumbs up signal, and definitely check out desgolan.com for some more information. So thanks, Des, and hopefully we'll see you in Mallow soon.
Okay, thanks, Barry John. Thanks, Bartley.
No problem. Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.